Welcome guys, this is your friend Naruto Addict 3.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto saved Karin and rebuilt the lost Uzumaki Empire? Part 1. Let's start this fanfic. The only answer she received was the stalwart silence of the trees, which was drowned out by the bear's growls as they grew even more haggard from the chase. Shigure and Kotsu, her teammates for the exam, left her die after they had purposely aggravated the bear with 2 kunai. Then they left her to stand there and become the target of its rage, hoping that someone else would come by. They hoped someone would see her, a young girl with red hair and glasses, and save her from the bear. Only for them to swoop down afterwards and steal their scroll, rewarding their heroism with knives in the back. So much for that famous hidden grass diplomacy she'd heard about. She told them it was a stupid plan. They were in the middle of a competition. People died during these things, and they were warned ahead of time what kind of place it was. No one would save her, and she had already been tired from the non-stop running to this point. The forest of death could give even the great forest of Kusa, where the enriched earth and sun-blotting canopy allowed the mushrooms and fungi to rival the height of buildings, a decent run in how savage it was. Sure, it had snakes and poisonous lizards. But at least it didn't have freaking tigers, or giant centipedes, or leeches that tried to suck you dry, or goddamn bears that wouldn't quit chasing her. Damn it, if she had known this would have happened she would have, well, she would have done it anyway. Orochimaru had laid the groundwork for getting her into the hidden grass village a year ago, leaving her to act as a spy and help him with whatever plan he had for the hidden leaf village this year. She knew the price of failure, and that her worth was only because she was still useful. It had been 2 years now since that day. The small village where she and her mother lived ended up being attacked while she was out in a nearby field. She sensed them coming, along with the almost palpable bloodlust and eagerness, and how some of them stood out by having more chakra than the others. It scared her. To have that malevolence, that revelry of the dark nature of mankind, touch her mind at such a young age without realizing what was happening left her terrified, clawing at her head to get it to go away. Then the screams from the village reached her ears as the blood began to soak the earth and flames ran wild. She ended up hiding, crying as the tears mixed with the ashes until it was all over the next morning. Her mother hadn't made it. No one else had. The path through the field to another village was long, leaving her cold and tired as her power seemed to flicker on and off. By the time she made it, she couldn't muster the energy to resist even as men threatened to take her and sell her into slavery. Nor when Orochimaru killed them and offered her a place to go since she had nowhere. It had been luck that she had made it to this point. But her luck refused to hold out any further. It only took a single moment, where the sweat stung her eyes and forced her to blink, for her to trip over an upraised root and end up sprawled with her back against a mighty tree. The impact stole her breath and forced it out of her throat, heated and raw. She was left staring down the eyes of the maddened bear, angered by the pair of kunai wedged in its back and worked up by the chase. It was going to kill her. Help! Her plea was near silent as the bear opened its mouth and revealed the stained fangs from a recent meal, matted with bits of meat and strings of saliva. She realized she was going to die. Banzai! Screamed innumerable voices, a chorus that came from above. It drew both the bear and Karin's gaze, whereupon they witnessed a rain of blonde-haired, orange jumpsuit-wearing boys descending. The group piled on the bear, hanging off of its larger and looming figure as it swiped at them and shook desperately to remove them. Karin felt a hand grasping her shoulder and jumped. She looked to her right to see another one of the boys, reaching for her arm. What are? Come on. He threw her over his shoulder and sped off, foot glowing with the illumination of chakra as he darted from trunk to branch. He carried her some distance away from the bear, leaving her to watch as the last of his doppelgangers removed the kunai in the back of the bear and then vanished in a puff of smoke. It was only after the bear, which seemingly glared in their direction for a moment, trotted off that she breathed freely, and then remembered that she was not in the safe comfort of her teammates, but a complete stranger from a rival village. She was being taken hostage. Let me go, she said, slamming the bottom of her fists and the scroll against the small of his back while flailing her legs. Release me this instant. Hey, don't struggle so much. The effort seemed at best to annoy him as he came to a stop and set her down against the crook of a tree limb. He pouted as he scratched his head. Geez, was that the thanks I get for helping out? Karin reached for a kunai and held it out defensively, clutching the false scroll to her chest with trembling fingers. She had to sell the impression that it was real. I won't let you have it. The blonde-hair boy held his hands up next to his head harmlessly. Hold on, I don't want your scroll. Besides, my team already has the Earth scroll. The mention of a team set her mind to high alert. Was this an ambush spot? Where were they hiding? She couldn't take her eyes off of him, otherwise he'd disarm and capture her, but she could spread her mind's eye out and sense anyone hiding nearby. The range seemed to only improve when she was riled up, afraid. She could feel the chakra surrounding them within a larger range than before. There was no one besides him, a strange and warm chakra that reminded her of her mother's. You can put that thing down now, the boy said, tilting his head. I'm not going to hurt you. If you. She swallowed, trying to calm her heart as it hammered in her chest from the chase. If you don't want my scroll, then why did you save me? You called for help, right? She nodded. Well, Sasuke and I had played a round of Jenkin to decide who would go in what direction and I lost. So I went this way and heard you screaming. When I saw that the bear was going to get you, I called up a bunch of shadow clones to drop down while I went down the side of the tree and around to where you were. He demonstrated by making a hand seal and she felt his chakra split in half. It literally split in half as another one of him came into existence, virtually identical in terms of chakra amount and type. Had she not been in front of him, she would have no clue which was the real one. He dispersed the clone, the chakra immediately retuning to him. Anyway, you're okay now, Karin, she told him, naturally still wary of the situation. Why was he being so good-natured? Could he not see her headband was different than his? Oh, that's a pretty name, he said, grinning and pointing a thumb to himself. I'm Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. Her head seemed to become cloudy and hazed at the mention. That name was, it was her clan's name. But that should have been impossible. Why? Karin stiffened when she felt two familiar chakra signatures approaching. Shigure and Kotsu. Of course they'd pop up now, of all times. They'd no doubt try to jump him and, while she didn't know how the fight would go since he could clone himself, she didn't want him to lose. If they managed to beat him, they'd probably take him and his scroll as leverage against other teams to get what they wanted. She was fairly sure he was slow on the uptake, a good-hearted rube if anything, but, yeah, she couldn't let him get caught by those jerks. Even if they had better odds that way, she just wouldn't be responsible for that, especially if he was who he said he was. It wasn't like she even cared about passing the exams anyway. Leave. He blinked. Huh, get out of here. She held her kunai up and stepped towards him. Go back to your team. Now. Okay. He did as he was told, jumping from the tree limb they were on to another in the distance. He looked back towards her a final time before departing for good, disappearing in a body flicker. She felt him heading in the opposite direction until he was outside her range. Karin breathed easier, even as the two older boys landed less than 10 seconds later. She wheeled around and faced them. Where were you two when that bear was attacking me? Sticking to the plan, Kotsu said, unashamed. Worst case, we'd have gotten you out. Bullshit. She threw the fake scroll towards Shigure, who caught it without blinking. That bear was seconds away from tearing me apart and you didn't do anything. You bastards left me to die. The plan worked, Shigure said. Or it would have if you managed to stall him for another few seconds. He didn't even have his scroll on him. She crossed her arms. And his team had the same one as ours. Did you even think about that when you came up with this plan? We still could have taken him as leverage. If you thought you could, then you cowards would have tried to get him when all those clones popped up. Don't blame me when I didn't even want to go through with this stupid plan in the first place. Karin jumped and skirted down the trunk of the tree. She didn't want to be around them any longer than she had to, and she got the feeling that it was mutual between them. Besides, she had other things on her mind. That boy said he was an Uzumaki, the same clan as hers. She wanted to know more about that. But first she had to get through this damn forest alive. Oh. Karen's thoughts about the Uzumaki boy continued until the final day came. They failed the second portion of the exam because they didn't find a heaven scroll in time, but Karin didn't care. Why should she when they didn't care about her enough to refrain from using her as bait? Those two had already left, mentioning how they would let their Junin know she didn't play along. Karin decided to wait there until she saw Kabuto arriving at the entrance of the underground path back to the village. His own teammates had chosen to remain behind for preliminary matches in the arena and would join once they were settled. She steeled herself and walked up alongside him when there was no one in sight and no cameras. "What is it?" he asked, short and to the point. She struggled to ask him because, quite frankly, Kabuto scared her. He was Orochimaru's right hand for a reason. She'd watched him kill a man with no visible wounds, animate his body, and then send him on a civilian killing spree to frame a group of shinobi without batting an eyelid once. "Do you have information on a boy who entered the exams, eh? Naruto Uzumaki," he called himself. He gave her a side glance in idle curiosity before nodding his head once. His hand slipped into his pouch and he pulled out a single card, pouring a trickle of chakra into it to activate the ink and data stored within it. There. She held the card with both of her hands, finding them trembling as she read the data. He was about a year or so younger than her, but that really was his name. And, now that she thought about it, didn't that orange jumpsuit have their clan symbol on it? Why was his hair blonde then? Maybe he was half-blooded and the traits of his not Uzumaki parent became dominant. The card listed him an orphan though. Did he lose his parents like she did? She had so many questions, and yet no answers. But that was fine. She could find him in the village now that she had felt his chakra. Given how quick he was to talk, he would probably be willing to talk to her about being from the same clan despite being from different villages. "Get ready to move once you get back to the village," Kabuto told her, breaking her line of thought. Figures. The dead members of the hidden grass that Orochimaru replaced were found and word will have been sent. The village will be recalling all their shinobi since none of them made it to the finals. You'll head back to the 17th base once you cross the border and await further orders. So she was being recalled. It made sense, though it would put a damper on her plans. "What about the three I came with? They'll be taken care of along the way." He adjusted his glasses, shifting the glare of light off of them. "I have a corpse that'll pass as you as well. 3 dead genin and a junin in the wake of the chunin exams won't draw too much attention." She wished she could say that the death of her teammates and leader would bother her, but she couldn't. There was no attachment. Not to them or the village. There wouldn't be much of a point when she was there as an infiltrator in the first place. The fact that they were jerks only softened it further. But, if she was heading back to the base and faking her death, she wouldn't see that boy again. A possible link to her clan was right in front of her, and if she left it would be gone forever. Karin couldn't just let that slide. She trailed off when he looked her in the eyes. It took a deep breath to muster her courage. "Is it possible I can stay in the village for reconnaissance or another assignment?" "That's not in the plan," he said, plucking the card from her hands and holding it up to the light. "But I'll contact him and see what his opinion is on the matter. My own cover wasn't blown, so who knows what we could do between now and the plan's fruition." That was probably the best response she could hope for as he walked ahead. Oh. Karin was awoken in the middle of the night by the feeling of scales scraping against her bare legs in her room in the inn. She pulled back the covers and found a white snake there, maybe 3 feet in length. The only reason she didn't scream was because her sensory power kicked in the moment she was woken and picked up traces of Orochimaru's chakra composing it. The snake coiled up and then stuck its head high, flicking its black tongue that contrasted the pale scales. Its eyes found hers, and a voice followed as it opened its mouth. "He has approved your request, child." Karin sat up properly, tucking her bare legs beneath her and placing her glasses on her face before resting her hands on her knees. He has. The snake bobbed its head once. That Uzumaki boy is the Jinchuriki of this village. He houses within him the nine-tailed fox. It should be said that he has an interest in retrieving him. Is that right? She had a basic understanding what a Jinchuriki was. After all, she and Kabuto had been given clear orders to avoid that Gaara boy from Suna like the plague. And she damn well knew why, considering what she felt from him. But Naruto was different. Even though she was still growing adept at using her power, he seemed to teem with yang chakra, vitality and life. He was like a warm sun onto himself, just like her mother was before she died. That meant the seal holding it in must have been superior to the other boys. The snake opened its mouth wider, unhinging its jaw so that a scroll could come out of its mouth. Karin reached over to the nightstand where she had a cloth to clean her glasses and used it on the scroll before opening it. The snake patiently waited until she had done so before it continued. The boy's status as a Jinchuriki is known amongst the adults of the village. He has been ostracized because of it. He is eager for bonds, the kind that can be exploited by your clans being one in the same. You will use that to get him into a position where he can be claimed during the impending plans. She went over the information on the scroll. It had his grades, close associates, a rough schedule of his activities up to the Chunin exam, a list of pranks he pulled, and more. It had to be Kabuto's doing. That man really did scare her. But the Junin told us that we'd be leaving tomorrow, Karin told the snake. What will be done about that? You will convince them to leave you behind while they go ahead, the snake said. State that you will do reconnaissance into the exams and the finals, to gauge the strengths and weaknesses of the other villages, on your own. Kabuto will supply the information in your place, leaving you to arrange for the Jinchuriki to be taken. So that gave her a month to get to know him and more about their clan. It shouldn't be too hard if what she was reading was right. I think I can do it by then. Be warned. This will interfere with the immediate plan to take the Uchiha in hopes of obtaining them both at a later date. If you fail, you will be punished severely. Your talents make you valuable, but there are other fates worse than death. He does not wish for this, but an example will be made. Do you understand? She swallowed, a drop of sweat running down her brow at the very real threat. He could render her brain dead, or lock her up into a vat to be used as a tool rather than a person. Or hand her over to Kabuto and let him get creative. I understand, she told it. Then, there is one more matter that needs to be attended to. It uncoiled and slithered around to the sole of her feet. Cover your mouth now. This will be painful. She barely got her hands over her mouth as the snake lashed out and bit her in the sole of her left foot, where the heel bone rested just above. Pain unlike anything she'd ever known attacked her. Unholy agony ran through her leg, carving its way up from her heel to her knee. The scream that wanted nothing more than to come out remained muffled by the mattress and sheets as she collapsed with tears in her eyes onto the bed, only able to endure the agony while the snake impassively watched on as the seal formed of poison and blood etched itself onto her. Karin had been marked. Karin's legs still felt sore when morning came. The snake had disappeared sometime after she had passed out. Her team had left her behind without much trouble not even an hour ago, heading back to their village. The Junin had made it clear that she was responsible for her own actions and, if caught, they would claim she was acting of her own accord and leave her to her fate. She already knew that, of course. From this point on, she would have no contact with them or Orochimaru to avoid suspicion on any level. Kabuto would handle the reports being sent to the hidden grass and would only contact her on his own accord or Orochimaru's orders, meaning she was on her own for all intents and purposes. Now she walked down the streets of the Hidden Leaf while dressed in a pair of shorts, sandals, and a long-sleeved red shirt. The scroll with all the information compiled on Naruto Uzumaki, which was stored safely away from prying eyes, had stated he often visited a local ramen vendor for his meals. That was where she was heading. It would be the best place to tell him about them being born of the same clan. The people there were the only ones who he had emotional ties to without being shinobi, making it a safe place where he could escape from the cloak and dagger nature of their work. It was a place where the revelation would have the most impact. The smell of ramen broth coming from the opposite end of an alley told her she was close. It also caused a pang of hunger to bubble up in her stomach. She hadn't eaten since last night, and it was well after noon at this point. "Welcome to Ramen Ichiraku," said an older girl in greeting as Karin passed through the entrance. She was at least close to being an adult, dressed in a white apron with a matching bandana in her long, dark brown hair. "What can I get you?" "I'm looking for Naruto," Karin said. "Naruto Uzumaki. Do you know if he'll come in today?" Her eyes seemed to rise in surprise at that, quickly settling into a cautious gaze. "Oh, and why exactly do you want to know that?" "Well, the first reason is that I wanted to thank him for saving me in the second exam." She pulled out her ninja ID, showing her last name. "The second is that I think we're from the same clan." Ayame stared at the card for a moment, scrutinizing it. Then she handed it back and held up a finger. "Give me a second." She went back into the kitchen. Not 10 seconds later, a large man came out, middle-aged with crow's feet around his eyes and gray hair. Ayame lurked behind him as he approached Karin. "So, you're saying you're part of the same clan as the boy?" He stared hard at her, rubbing his chin in thought. "Is that red hair a trait?" "I believe so," she said. "My mother had the same hair color, but I can't say if it's the same for everyone. I'd been looking for other clan members since I became an orphan after bad things happened. I ran into Naruto in the forest, but I didn't get a chance to talk to him with the exams going on." Well, take a seat and wait for him to show up." Tuki turned to go back into the kitchen. "Ayame, make the girl something to eat while she does." Ayame did so, setting the steaming hot bowl in front of her. "Here, on the house." "Thank you." Knowing Naruto, he'll be here shortly. Ayame leaned onto the counter with her elbows and perched her head in her hands. She wore a friendly smile. "In the meantime, tell me how he saved you." Karin gave her the details, and then answered some questions on what it was like living in the hidden grass. Not as bright as the hidden leaf, but it had its own nocturnal charm with plants that shone in the dark by expelling light in a soft glow. When the spores were scattered, it was a beautiful sight, like it's stardust falling from above. While she did that, she expanded her sensory powers in anticipation. It was slow going, waiting for him to show up. But Ayame was kind and talkative, making the time seem to pass quicker. It wasn't until Karin finished a second bowl that she picked up his chakra and turned her head towards the entrance. Naruto popped in with his eyes closed and a big grin on his face. "I smell something good. Serve me up some of that, Ayame ne, Tuki-san." "You little charmer." Ayame walked over and pinched his cheek playfully. "Saving damsels in distress and sweeping them off their feet is all in a day's work now, huh?" Karin's cheeks reddened from embarrassment with the way she said that. But it was true, as much as she wished otherwise. He had come in and swept her off her feet to rescue her from danger almost literally. His voice was almost comical as he tried speaking while she tugged at his cheek. "What are you talking about?" The older girl released him and gestured to Karin, who wiped her mouth with a napkin and cleared her throat. "Hello again, Naruto." He pointed to her in recognition. "Ah, you're that girl from the forest." She nodded once. "I'm glad you remember me, and that you made it through the forest safely." "Really?" He tilted his head in confusion. "I mean, you threatened me after I helped you get away from the bear." "I'm sorry about that," she said. "The bear you saved me from had been sent to attack me by my teammates, in order to lure someone into helping me. I didn't want you to have to fight them, so I drove you away before they could hurt you. It wouldn't have been fair, given you had saved me despite us being from different villages." "Okay, but that was a really dumb plan though," Naruto said. She didn't disagree. "I mean, you could have really gotten hurt. What if I hadn't helped?" "It doesn't matter anymore," she told him. "They're gone now. No one from the hidden grass passed the second exam, so everyone packed up and left this morning." I stayed behind because I wanted to thank you, and. Go on, Ayame said gently at the hesitation in her voice, while Naruto just looked puzzled. You've waited for over an hour now. Just say it while you can. Let me introduce myself properly. She held one hand to her chest and extended the other for him to see the card. My name is Karin, Karin Uzumaki, of the Uzumaki clan. There was a very lengthy pause after that, with his expressions shifting constantly as his eyes seesawed from her card to her face. It took him almost a minute to get the words out. There's an Uzumaki clan. I thought you would know, Karin said. It's fairly common knowledge that the first Hokage married Mito Uzumaki, symbolizing an alliance back when the Hidden Leaf was first formed. Just about every village's formation has been recorded, after all. A smile of embarrassment formed on his face and he shifted his eyes off to the side. I was never good at history, I probably missed that lesson if they covered it in the academy. Told you, Ayame said in a sing-song tone, even as he looked pensive at the information. Are you going to stand there all day, Naruto? Can I sit next to you and eat while we talk? Naruto asked Karin, scratching his cheek at the awkwardness. That hospital food wasn't doing it for me. Sure. She waited for him to take a seat and place an order. He seemed bothered by the news, a shift in his day he wasn't expecting. It was better to let him start the next dialogue. So, he started with, I know that a lot of clan members look the same, I mean, the Hyuga all have the same eyes and Kiba's family has those markings. But we don't look too much alike, do we? I know my mother and father had red hair similar to mine, Karin said. I was surprised you didn't at hearing your name. If you didn't dye it, then I would have to guess one of your parents wasn't an Uzumaki and their dominant genes gave you blonde hair. I wouldn't know, he said. I never knew my parents. Sorry, she told him, a small, sad smile forming on her face as she looked down. I know what it's like to be an orphan myself. My father was gone before I was born, and my mother died during an attack on the small village we lived in a few years ago. I'm sorry for your loss, Naruto told her. When you told me your last name, I didn't know what to think. Her fingers grew restless and entwined themselves in her hair. It was surprising how easily the words came out. They weren't false or an act, but how she truly felt. I wanted to speak with you, to meet you outside the forest and talk about, well, anything. I thought since the Hidden Leaf and our home village were close, you'd know more. She reached up and traced the embossed spiral symbol of the Hidden Leaf on his headband. Mother told me that the Uzumaki clan had been scattered, at least those that survived. She told me that the spiral, like on your back and your village's emblem, is the symbol of the hidden whirlpool, a sign of how close the villages were before it fell. Naruto looked upset now, staring down into his ramen that reflected his eyes. I didn't even know that much, you must think I really should have, if that was the case. Not at all. Karin kept her voice gentle. While it was true she wished he did know more, that was no reason to have him beat himself up about it. How could I blame someone who wasn't even born during that time for not knowing anything? Besides, you saved me. I can't thank you enough for that. You're welcome. He rubbed the back of his head nervously. Then his face scrunched up before settling into a smile. Now that I think about it, I bet the old man would know more about this stuff. He knows just about everything. Karin opened her mouth to ask who that was, but another voice beat her to it. I'll be sure to ask him that after I tell him about how you disobeyed orders, Naruto. Oh, Naruto said, almost whimpering. Karin could hear him gulp before he turned his head glacially in fear. Kakashi-sensei, what bring you here? Oh, well, you know. He set a hand on Naruto's shoulder and gave him a smile expressed through how his eye closed. Imagine, to my surprise, when I came to visit my student in the hospital and learned he's left through the window of his room, which he was ordered not to leave until he received further notice. He's not in trouble, is he? Karin asked, somewhat worried for a number of reasons. She knew who this man was from the scroll. Even before then, he had reputation and Orochimaru had him on the list of those not to take lightly. Probably nothing more than a scolding and being tied down to his bed, miss. Karin, she said. Karin Uzumaki. She says we're from the same clan, Naruto helpfully added. Ah, interesting, he said, looking at her. But that's a matter for a later time. You'll be here for a while, yes. Until the end of the Chunin exams, Karin admitted, looking at Naruto. She couldn't stop him from being dragged back. I'm staying at the Petal Fall Inn. I'll come visit you in the hospital, if you're willing to put me on the visitors list. No need, Kakashi said, before Naruto could get his own words out, lifting the genin out of his seat and onto his shoulder. It was exactly like how Naruto had done her. He'll be released tomorrow and no doubt here, dining on the delicious ramen they sell. My compliments to both you and your father, Ayame-chan. The older girl blushed. Thanks. Wait, my ramen. Naruto's words were cut off as he and Kakashi vanished in a textbook perfect body flicker. Even as Karin extended her range, she could feel that he was already outside of it. The man was fast. Naruto's a sweet boy, but not really a conversationalist when you catch him off guard, Ayame told her as she took his bowl and packed it into a box. I'll go deliver this to his room at the hospital. Do you want me to tell him anything? Karin bit the inside of her lip as she tried to think of what to say. Tell him I'll see him tomorrow, around the same time. You got it. Ayame gave her a wink and then left out with the box while it was still warm. Karin gave her thanks to the chef and promised to come again before leaving, deep in thought about everything. She didn't expect to find Kakashi in her room when she got back, leaning against a wall near the window. That, honestly, shouldn't have been a surprise. Naruto was too valuable to their village as the Jinchuriki for anything less. You've gone through my things, haven't you? Karin asked. It was the first thing they taught you to do when rooting out spies and finding hidden caches. Of course, Kakashi said without shame. He had no need to hide what he'd done. He lived in this village, she was a guest. No offense, but you are a kunoichi from another village. Even if the hidden grass isn't hostile, precautions should be taken, especially in light of what transpired during the exams. She was fairly sure he meant those dead genin from her village that Orochimaru had replaced. I'm not allowed to talk about that, even if you know. I have no idea what you're referring to, he lied, doing the same. Plausible deniability was a wonderful thing. But, on the matter of Naruto, you understand we're wary about someone with clan ties suddenly appearing after he's slated to head to the finals. Are you here to tell me I can't see him again? Far be it from me to deny him the chance to bond with a long-lost clan member. He stood straight off the wall now. I'm just informing you that you will be watched as a target of interest. If, at any point, you pry into secrets that you shouldn't, you'll be detained as a spy. You know the standard conduct expected when it comes to extended stays in foreign villages, correct? I understand, she told him. I'll be good. He nodded his head once in acceptance. I'll take my leave then. Then he leapt out the window. Her sensory power caught him walking around to the side of the building, into the alley, and then disappearing. It must have been a shadow clone. Karin sighed. She was grateful that the seal on her foot also served as a storage seal for Naruto's information. That would have been execution worthy. She spent a few minutes looking around to see if he left behind any sort of bug, more out of habit than necessity. It wouldn't be hard for someone experienced to have the room watched without her noticing visually. Her mind's eye was a different story, allowing her to sense the Anbu officer that lurked just outside her room now. And she planned to keep that a secret for that very reason. Oh. The original Kakashi, sitting the Hokage's office, received the information from his clone right about then. The warning has been delivered. No signs of anything in her room to suggest she's a spy. Good, Sarutobi said, tapping his pipe as he stood at the window and looked out at the village. I would have hated to have to tell Naruto that she was a spy after he just learned about his clan. That will already be enough of an unpleasant conversation tomorrow. So, is she a Spitfire like Kushina? Asked the third person in the room, Jiraiya. The Toad Sage had been ordered to return the moment they noticed Orochimaru's presence, and he'd done so quickly and dutifully through judicious use of the ability to be reverse summoned. Not at a glance, Kakashi said. Then again, hidden grass shinobi were always hard to read. They're diplomatic in their roots, after all, at least with us. Priorities, gentlemen, Sarutobi said. Orochimaru has gone to ground and I doubt we'll find him. I have nearly the entirety of Anbu searching for him, but in the meantime we need to deal with those seals he placed on Naruto and Sasuke Uchiha. I'll take care of that seal he placed on Naruto the moment I'm out of here, Jiraiya told him. From the sound of it, it was the 5-pronged seal that's messing with his chakra flow. Fixing that won't take 5 minutes, but he'll need a day or so for the flow to readjust. As for the Uchiha boy, the seal Kakashi placed was the best we could do right now. If I had the chance to investigate it through an autopsy I might be able to do something, but until then he'll have to manage. Next is the Chunin exams. The Hokage turned towards his desk and extinguished the contents of his pipe. Kakashi, you train the Uchiha so he doesn't get killed. You have the Sharingan and can help him. Understood, Kakashi stated. But what of my other 2 students? Miss Haruno can make do by mingling and learning from her peers or her parents. My priority at Karin made her way once more to the Ramen Ichiraku, where Naruto should be waiting for her. She was fairly sure that her cover hadn't been blown, otherwise the Anbu stationed outside her room wouldn't have been content to remain there while she slept. Under that assumption, imagine her surprise when she entered the restaurant to find Naruto glaring and grumbling heatedly at an Anbu officer sitting there. It was a woman, with purple hair and a porcelain mask that resembled a cat with 3 stripes. Karin froze in place, wondering if she had been made after all and they were just waiting to get her here for some reason. It was illogical, given how much quicker and easier snatching her from her room would have been, and she knew it. But knowing how unlikely it was didn't ease her doubts. The fear activated her mind's eye on instinct to find there were a few other signatures around her, one being really strong. Like as strong as Orochimaru, more or less. That was less comforting than she liked. It was only because Naruto greeted her warmly that she didn't run away. Karin-chan, you're here. The moment is the 2 boys that Orochimaru targeted. Speaking of Naruto, Jiraiya, you came in undetected, correct? Jiraiya nodded. Good. Disguise yourself and prepare to train him, I'll leave how to your discretion. As an afterthought, he added, no gathering, inspiration, either, it's too much of a giveaway to your presence. He sighed, but agreed. Understood. That just leaves me then. He took a deep breath, no doubt feeling his years if Kakashi had to guess. I'll make arrangements to have my schedule cleared for an hour or so to talk to Naruto about his mother and her clan. Let's hope he's ready to hear it. Her eyes darted between him and the Anbu officer. Naruto, what's going on? He pointed at the woman petulantly. This lady showed up and told me that I had to answer a bunch of questions and stuff before she would let me stay. The Anbu officer paid him no mind and instead turned to Karin. You're not armed, are you? She quickly shook her head. No, I'm a guest in a non-hostile village. I thought it would be inappropriate to walk around armed. In a worst-case scenario, I could simply call for help. The woman seemed to take that for what it was and rose to her feet. Make any abrupt movements and I will take the appropriate action to restrain you, understand? Karin nodded. Yes, ma'am. She did a gesture, some sort of code that was picked up by one of the signatures. Even with the walls in the way. One of those Hyuga people in their ranks then. Could they see the seal on her foot? No, she figured. Orochimaru was many things, but careless wasn't one of them from what she knew. It shouldn't have a noticeable chakra signature or really draw any attention. Not as long as she kept her socks on and didn't try to hide it as anything important, if it came up. A few seconds later, the larger signature moved towards them and spoke when just outside the restaurant booth. Really, was that necessary? Naruto and the Ichiraku staff perked up at the aged voice. They recognized it. Naruto practically beamed with a smile that stretched wide as he called out, "Hey, old man. What's the big idea with the scary masked lady?" The source of the voice stepped in, revealing an old man dressed in the cage's robe with a hat that held the symbol for the fire shadow on it. Well, she insisted we follow proper procedure with the Chunin exams going on. As if someone would take an interest in an old man like myself. Karen's mind briefly blanked. This was the Hokage. The Hokage was the old man that Naruto was referring to. More importantly, he called his village's most powerful shinobi that to his face. Naruto, you can't just disrespect your village's leader by calling him that. She grabbed his head and lowered it with her own towards the Hokage. I'm sorry for how he addressed you. Please forgive him. For a moment, Karin was afraid that the sudden movement would set off the Anbu officer. However, if anything, the woman tilted her head in amusement at the sight. Had Naruto annoyed her until Karin came in? For the Hokage's part, he laughed softly. Ah, while Naruto could use a few lessons in manners, he's fine. I've known him since he was a baby. He's like a grandson to me. She released Naruto, who rubbed the back of his head and pouted. The files said the Hokage kept an eye on him, but she didn't expect it to be to this extent. If they were like family, which was a contrast to what it said about him being an outcast, it would make her mission much harder when the day came. The Hokage looked over to Ayame and Tuki. Good to see both of you doing well, but can we have some privacy? The matters we're about to discuss are somewhat private and involves their clan. They complied and darted to the back of the shop. Karin felt one of the Anbu move into a position to intercept them should they try and listen in. She doubted they would though, given how he addressed them as though they were familiar too. Should I leave? Karin asked. She was interested. In fact, it was the main reason she made contact with Naruto to begin with. But didn't want to offend the most powerful person in the village. Curiosity was deadly when it came to shinobi. The decision is Naruto's, he said, taking a seat. It has been brought to my attention that you have stirred his interest in learning about your clan, but I am here for Naruto's sake and some of the information may be private. Letting him have the agency is his right. She didn't even have to ask before Naruto spoke up on his own accord. Yeah, let her listen. If we're from the same clan then she should know whatever it is. Thank you, Karin said earnestly, which got a smile out of him. So be it. The older man then looked down to Naruto and frowned a bit, the wrinkles on his face shifting as he did so. Now, I'll be honest. What I'm going to tell you isn't a happy story, which is why I've put this off for as long as I have. And I will be keeping the identity of your father a secret. He was a shinobi who dealt with high-profile missions, and you know the rules when it comes to A and S rank secrets. Naruto's interest was piqued. He nodded. Don't ask question, don't say anything, basically. I know. But if we can't talk about him, then does that? Karin didn't blame him for trailing off. He had been an orphan and likely hadn't thought much about it. It was easier that way sometimes. She had been fortunate having a mother who could tell her that her father would have loved her unconditionally, but what assurances did he have in a village that ostracized him from what she read? The Hokage pulled out a card and handed it to him. It was a ninja ID card with the identification number being 007310. The picture was that of a beautiful woman with long red hair, with a bandana for the village on her forehead and a smile was on her face as she held up 2 fingers in a victory pose. Kushina, Uzumaki, Naruto brushed the image gently. So was my mother. She died the night of your birth, the Hokage said, somberly. Along with your father, I'm afraid. There were no other relatives left alive, no other members of the Uzumaki left to take you in since their village had been destroyed shortly after she was brought to the Hidden Leaf from the Hidden Whirlpool, during her childhood. That made you a ward of the village, but I promised her I'd look after you. They both loved you dearly, Naruto. I see, he said, looking rather sad at that. He must have known on some level that was the case, but hearing it spoken probably brought up all sorts of feelings he tried to repress. Karin still felt inclined to put a hand on his shoulder, a means of comfort. There wasn't much she could say, barring the standard condolences. And that wouldn't do him justice given what he'd learned. She knew that she didn't feel any better when others gave them to her when she mentioned her mother's death. Naruto appreciated the gesture all the same, judging by how he looked up to her with a somewhat forced and fragile smile. She has red hair like yours, he told her. Only longer and pretty, like Sakura-chan's before she cut it. Karin felt a pang of something at the mention of his teammate. A copy of their team photo had been in the scroll, attached for reference with a minor outline of Kabuto's understanding of their group dynamic. It had been mentioned Naruto had a crush on her since their time in the academy. She brought her other hand up to her hair and fiddled with the ends as the murmur slipped out on its own. Give me a few more years and my hair will be long too. He tilted his head. You say something. A small blush appeared on her face at the slip of the tongue. Nothing, Naruto. I just mentioned your mother looks very pretty. The Hokage, watching this with a half-interest, pulled out a map and pointed to a small island between the land of fire and the land of water. Here is where the hidden whirlpool was located. It's quite distant from where we are, a factor that played a part in their destruction during the Great Wars. At some point after your mother arrived, they were attacked by an enemy nation and destroyed. But why? Naruto asked. It looks so small on this map, so why would they destroy it? Seals can do incredible things, Naruto, the Hokage said. They act as contracts that allow for summonings, they can bind souls into one another, and they can make distance irrelevant. Even the basics allow for one to turn script and chakra into explosives or contain objects in their own pocket dimension. Sealing arts cannot do everything but, given the clan's proficiency, they had every right to be feared despite being such a small village in themselves. And that was without getting into their other abilities, Karin thought as she rubbed her arms. She had long sleeves on for a reason, so that the bite marks wouldn't draw attention. She didn't feel like explaining that to anyone if she didn't have to. Sadly, he continued, this was actually a common practice during those terrible times. Clans with unique bloodlines or artifacts would give the enemy an advantage. If given a chance, the soundest tactic was to either subsume them or eliminate them. That is often why such clans congregate into the larger villages like those found here, for their own protection. Karin hesitated when she drew their attention by speaking. Have you seen it since then? What's left? He nodded. We were fighting our own battles then, but I did. Like I said, they tore the village down thoroughly. It had been hollowed out, plundered of whatever valuables it had, and remains were everywhere. To see such a longtime ally of our village in such a state was disheartening. We laid all that we could find to rest in a mass grave before returning to our village, only able to keep their memory alive with the spiral within our village's emblem. Even then, time has robbed most of that memory. Karin couldn't help but feel a weight in her heart, tears slowly forming at the news. She was no different than Naruto when it came to his mother. She knew logically that it had happened, and should have been prepared, but it still hurt listening to it from someone who had been there. This time Naruto laid a hand on her shoulder, offering her some comfort in the same manner she had done him. It surprised her at first. Not many people had touched her soothingly after her mother's death. She touched his hand, wrapping her fingers around it and squeezing softly. The Hokage allowed it, a moment of silence until she calmed herself. This is why I was waiting until you were older, Naruto. I didn't want to tell you that you belonged to a clan that had been robbed of everything. There is no land to give you, no legacy but what is in history books, nothing but ruins of your scattered clan. So it was just luck that I ran into Karin-chan then. To be frank, I was surprised when I heard that Miss Uzumaki here contacted you, he said. Karin figured that meant he didn't personally oversee all of the applicants for the Chunin exams then. Some mid-level paper pusher was responsible, if not a group of them given the sheer number. Besides your mother, the last time I received a report about a suspected full-blooded Uzumaki had been during Hanzo's reign in the Hidden Rain, and he had been killed by the man himself from what my student told me. Even if there were others, it was likely they were sold on the black market and lost to the world, Karin added. They both looked at her. It almost happened to me, after the village I was raised in had been razed by bandits and I went to another. 2 slavers recognized my hair and planned on selling me. I managed to get away somehow and joined grass sometime afterwards. You were fortunate. The Hokage looked to a clock on the wall and then to Naruto. My time is growing short, I'm afraid. I'll have to leave soon. But, before I do, what were you planning to do for the finals, Naruto? Quote. Oh, that. Naruto crossed his arms and scrunched up his face in thought. I was just going to punch that Neji guy in the face until he stopped moving. Why? Karin gave him a doubtful look. Aren't Hyuga supposed to be really good at close combat? I don't know the specifics, but they do something to your chakra if they so much as touch you. I saw what he did to Hinata-chan in the preliminary, Naruto said. But I swore on her blood that I would get revenge. I won't back down. I'll ask Kakashi-sensei for training. I'm afraid he'll likely be busy training your teammate, the Hokage said, rising to his feet. He's the only one left who can help him with his eyes. However, I've arranged for you to have a personal tutor named Gamma. He'll contact you soon for training, so don't skip his lessons. The thought of receiving a personal trainer seemed to make Naruto grin as brightly as he had when the Hokage first arrived. Thanks, old man. I knew you'd look out for me. Karin rose to her feet and bowed in gratitude. Thank you for telling me all of this as well. It meant a lot to me. The Hokage smiled. Thank Naruto. I'm glad he found you, and I hope you two get along for the duration of your stay in the village. He could use someone else cheering for him in the finals, since I'm supposed to be unbiased. Of course, she told him. I'll be happy to cheer him on. Then, I'll see you both at the finals. Farewell until then. The Hokage departed. With that said, the hidden Anbu doing the same as they trailed him back to his tower in absolute stealth. That left them alone until the owner of the Ichiraku and his daughter came back in. The pair, perhaps seeing their faces in light of the new information, set to making them both a bowl of ramen to lighten the mood. You're really going to cheer me on? He asked as a steaming bowl was set in front of him by Ayame, who proceeded to run her hand over his hair like an older sibling would a younger one. Why wouldn't I? Karin asked. I'd be happy to see my fellow clansmen become a chunin. I'll even help you if I can. I'm not much of a fighter, and what I can do is limited because I'm not a member of your village, but I'm fairly good at chakra control and planning things. At the very least, I can help you study up on strategies and tactics. He seemed happy at that, but there was still a sense of lingering somberness hanging over them as they finished and said their goodbyes to the kind pair that ran Ichiraku. Naruto came to a stop when they reached the end of the block and turned to her. Can we pick up on this tomorrow? There's somewhere I want to go since, if my mom was in the service and died that night. She understood, even if he didn't finish. You want to visit the memorial stone, I think they called it here. Naruto nodded. We can meet up at Ichiraku's, same time tomorrow. I should have my head a bit more clear by then. Sure, but first let me do this. Karin took a deep breath and gave him a hug, feeling his body tense in her grasp before relaxing. She pulled away and looked him in the eyes. If you ever want to talk about it, let me know. Okay. Oh. Her name was there. Naruto found it strange he didn't notice it before, when Kakashi brought them. He thought he should have been drawn to it through some sort of familial connection, as the son of a fallen kunoichi. But he hadn't noticed until he was told. That ate at him. Then again, part of him hoped he never had to know anyone on the stone once he had learned what it meant. It would mean they were dead, killed in the line of duty. It meant that he had failed to keep them safe as a fellow shinobi. Did that mean he failed her the moment he was born as well, too late to act as the seal to hold the nine-tailed fox before it killed her? Or did she die giving birth to him and he was the one who killed her? Naruto stirred at the sound of someone approaching behind him and turned to see Kakashi there. Didn't expect to see you here, the Junin said. I take it the Hokage talked to you about your mother's clan. He nodded. Did you know her? Yes, I did, Kakashi admitted as he crouched down next to him by the stone. I was acquainted with her when I was a child around your age. You inherited a lot of her personality, you know. Naruto looked him in the eye. You didn't tell me. Why? There are many secrets surrounding you, Naruto, he pointed out. Both your status as the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox and the situation leading up to it. I couldn't, even if I wanted to. You understand that. He did know. The only reason he knew as much as he did now was because of a series of coincidences. Mizuki had told him out of spite that he'd been the one to contain the nine-tailed fox, and he was sitting in prison with no chance of getting out if Naruto remembered right. For someone as loyal as Kakashi, he would have kept quiet under torture. Naruto couldn't begrudge him or anyone else for that. I guess you're right. We can talk about her now, if you want. Kakashi offered. Naruto thought about it for a moment. Yeah, I'd like that. So they did. How did your morning training go today? Karin asked Naruto as they sat next to one another at Ichiraku's. It was afternoon and Naruto had been given a lunch break before he resumed training. Where better to spend his time eating lunch than his favorite restaurant with his new clanswoman? The smell of ramen and sight of white aprons were becoming all too common for Karin after spending the last 4 days visiting to speak with him. Surprisingly, she didn't mind so much. Ayame made for a decent conversationalist when he wasn't around, and Naruto was often bright enough to warm her up with his cheerfulness. Naruto scratched his cheek, revealing red prayer beads around his wrists. It's a start, I guess. Right now he's testing me on the basics, but in a few days we'll move on to some new stuff. Gamma-sensei's a bit of a pervert though. You shouldn't call your tutor a pervert, Karin told him. The Hokage picked him out for you, so he has to be some kind of super important Junin. Even if you say that, he fell for my jutsu yesterday. Naruto immediately regretted saying that when both Ayame and Karin shot him a look, the latter of whom could easily guess what it was and the former having warned him about it once before. He abruptly added, I was just doing it to test if my chakra was working fine. Something happened in the forest that made it all wonky until it was fixed in the hospital, but I was told not to push it until now. Ayame let slip out skeptically. She clearly didn't buy it. Don't let me hear you did it again. Yes, ma'am. Naruto chuckled nervously at her disapproving glare. Once she looked away, he sighed deeply and turned back to Karin. But yeah, that's about it for now. He did give me these though. When he held up the prayer beads around his wrist, she prodded them with her fingers but didn't find anything off about them. He gave you beads. It's a sealing technique, he explained. Her interest was immediately piqued. Gamma-sensei did a sealing technique that made them heavy when I'm in training to improve my body condition for the match. They change colors depending on if I'm in training or not. That's a surprise, she said. I didn't know they could do that. It's like the old man said, seals can do incredible things. Naruto looked pensive as he trailed off. I learned a bit more from Kakashi-sensei about my mom. She was supposed to have been good at seals too, despite being a lot like me. It made me wonder what I could have learned if she were here now, and Karin felt a tug in her chest at how his voice dropped. It was still a sensitive issue, one that she knew perfectly well considering her own mother's death. She set a hand down on his knee in solace and changed the topic. Don't you have a shinobi library in the village? Naruto blinked. I think so. Sakura-chan might have mentioned it once or twice since she likes books. Why? If it's anything like the one in Grass, then it should have a library of different techniques and history books. You're only a genin, so your access will be limited, but you should be able to check out a couple of basic technique scrolls on sealing arts. His brows seemed to knit at the thought. I thought I was done with books and scrolls when I graduated from the academy, but I guess I can try. Do you want to come with me? Karin shook her head, giving him a sad smile. I can't. I'm not a native kunoichi to this village. There are regulations in place for that sort of thing, and I'm not here on a mission that would require access. Oh right, I had forgotten. It's just that it's nice having someone to really talk to, so I didn't remember. Karin couldn't help but think the sheepish smile he gave her was sort of cute. Not that she told him. Instead she made small talk. Just some harmless questions to keep him entertained and learn a bit more about him until it was time for him to resume his training. She let him go with a promise to see him tomorrow and then talked a bit more with Ayame before heading back to the Petal Fall Inn. The Anbu officers were still following her and remained stationed to watch her, but at this point she treated them as part of the background. She did nothing to give away who she was affiliated with. Nor did she give any indication she was a censor who could detect them through the hiding with camouflage technique they seemed so fond of, to the point she had picked up their rotation patterns already. However, Karin did stir when she felt Naruto entering her range several hours later. He was on the lower floor, at the service desk. She closed her book and left her room, grabbing the half-full bucket of ice on her way out. That would make it seem like she was going to get a refill as she made her way down to the lounge and stumbled across him. Naruto, she said, feigning surprise. Why are you here this late? I wanted to tell you in person that I got a bunch of books for you to read, he said. I talked it over with Gamma-sensei. He said that you can't check them out, but I can take some of them home and let you read them. I have a bunch of them at my place now. So you're inviting me to come over to your home at night? That was quicker than she expected. She didn't think he'd be so willing to let someone he only knew for a few days into his home. That's okay, right? He asked. I mean, I cleaned up and everything. I guess it couldn't hurt. She rubbed the back of her neck as she noticed the Anbu officer watching her had shifted around to a position they could listen in better. I can spare a few hours to help you out. He flashed a bright smile and grabbed her hand to lead her out. Great. Follow me. She followed behind him until they reached his apartment. It was one bedroom, one bathroom, and a small dining area with a kitchen installed. The walls had seen some wear and tear, but the window gave him a great view. The wooden paneling on the floor and lower part of the walls could use some polishing as well, but otherwise it was fairly decent for an orphan. Naruto, I thought you said you found a few books. Karin gestured to the aforementioned books scattered left and right over the floor. There were significantly more than a few. I count at least 20 at a glance. It's just a bunch of history books. He stepped around them to where his bed was. That had a few scrolls on it. Gamma-sensei mentioned that the older ones would likely have references that were excluded in later drafts. I figured we could look through some of them for any mention of our clan. Since Kakashi-sensei has something planned for our team tomorrow in the afternoon, I don't have to go to sleep too early and can help out. That might actually work. If they only cross-referenced mentions of Uzumaki in the village and old maps, they could work faster and get through them all. Let's organize them by the oldest editions first. Those will have the most information. Oh. Sakura climbed the stairs to Naruto's apartment the next afternoon, grumbling under her breath as she did so. Kakashi had sent her to retrieve him since he was late to the meeting they were supposed to have today. She hadn't seen him since he scraped through the preliminaries by his teeth. After that he had been hospitalized and then checked out while she was coming to terms with everything that happened in the Forest of Death. Her fingers found themselves brushing the shortened ends where she had cut her hair in the Forest of Death. Her mother had helped her clean it up somewhat, telling her she did the right thing when Sakura gave her an abridged version of what happened during the exam. Her mother had been a kunoichi once before, at least until she retired after Sakura had been born, so she had been proud that Sakura was willing to cut the long hair she treasured so much for her teammates. Sakura had been doing a lot of thinking since then in her match with Ino. She owed Naruto a lot more than she realized, him, Lee, and Sasuke. Until then, she hadn't realized how much they basically did the heavily lifting for the team, or rather she didn't want to admit it to herself. She knocked on his door once she reached it. Naruto, open up. Sakura-chan. His voice was muffled through the door. Hold on. Naruto opened up and she was about to thank him for everything when she spotted someone shifting behind him, nestled beneath the covers of his bed. It was a girl, maybe around their age, with messy red hair. She sat up on the bed slowly, the sheets sliding down as a result and showing her disheveled shirt, and wearily rubbed her eyes. Pervert. Sakura found herself yelling, jumping to conclusions. Her fist smacked him hard and sent him flying into the wall. Naruto. Screamed the girl, now wearing a pair of glasses. She threw aside the covers, revealing that she was wearing a long-sleeved shirt and a pair of short, and stumbled through the spread of open books to get next to him. "Are you okay?" He mumbled something too low for Sakura to hear, blinking rapidly. The girl glared at her through the lenses of her glasses. "Why would you do that to him?" "Well, I didn't expect him to have a girl in his bed when I got here," Sakura said. "That's no excuse for hitting your teammate," the girl claimed. "What he does in his home is his own business. You could have at least asked first before jumping to conclusions." Karin-chan, Naruto slurred a bit, before shaking his head and rubbing the back of his head. "It's fine." "No, it isn't," the girl named Karin argued. "Even my teammates didn't do that to me." I'm sorry," Sakura managed to say, a look of shame on her face as she stared down at her fist. "You're right, he didn't deserve that. It was a knee-jerk reaction. Speaking of which, who are you and why were you in his bed?" She checked to see if Naruto had injured his head like a mother hen, worry in her eyes quickly turning to anger as she looked back to Sakura. "I'm a member of Naruto's clan. He invited me over to do research on the Uzumaki and we ended up falling asleep. Was that worth hitting him for? Your appearance didn't make it seem all that innocent." Sakura shot back, too used to Ino's snarking to stop it from coming out beforehand. "What was I supposed to think with you on his bed looking like that?" Karin looked away, a blush spreading across her face in embarrassment. "I'm a rough sleeper. I toss and turn a lot, and it takes a while to fix in the morning. I really didn't even want Naruto to see me like this, but I got too into researching and fell asleep before I knew it." "It's not that bad," Naruto told her as he stood. "Anyway, what are you doing here, Sakura-chan?" "The meeting," she said. "Kakashi-sensei sent me to get you." "Huh." He blinked and turned his head to the clock. Panic set in. "Crap. I'm late." The girls watched as hurried into the bathroom and ran the water faucet, brushing his teeth and washing his face within the span of a minute. He slipped into his jumpsuit, hopping on one leg at a time, before putting on his sandals. He grabbed a ration bar out of his cabinet last and then made for the door. "Stay as long as you like," he told Karin as he bolted past Sakura and jumped over the edge of railing. "See you later." He took off running towards the training ground the moment he landed on the street, unintentionally leaving Sakura behind. As for the girls, Karin merely glared at her as she adjusted her glasses. It was almost as if she was sizing her up, judging her for what she had done. It grated on Sakura more than she liked to admit. Sakura turned away from Naruto's supposed clanswoman and jumped over the railing as he had done. She could still feel the girl's eyes on her as she ran to catch up with him. Was she that angry at her? Did it look that bad hitting him like that? The thought bothered her until she and Naruto arrived to the meeting. Kakashi, Team 10, and Team 8 were there, minus Hinata. The poor girl was still in the hospital. Lee too, after what Gaara of the desert did to him. She shuddered at the thought of him being Sasuke's opponent. Kakashi put away his book. "Nice of you to finally join us, Naruto. Do try and be punctual next time. You won't be able to become a Chunin if you're late for meetings." Sakura, Naruto, and Sasuke all gave him a flat look at that. "I was a Junin before I started getting lost on the road of life," he said to the silent accusations of hypocrisy. "And I'm not late to the important stuff." "Well, I had Karin over last night," Naruto said as an excuse. "She got really into what we were doing and we ended up going at it until morning. It wore me out more than I thought." "Woohoo," Kiba cheered, breaking up the skeptical and conflicted looks that he was getting from everyone else. "Guess there were no hard feelings over his defeat then. Nice, man." Sakura grabbed her wrist and resisted the urge to hit him for how he said that. It was an innocent mistake, judging by how he was looking confused about everything. Naruto meant he was doing research all night with her. There were books everywhere. "Ah, that explains it." Kakashi huffed. "Next time, work on how you phrase that. Misunderstandings are easy to make without context and you could have made things complicated for her given she's a visiting kunoichi." "You knew about her?" Sakura asked, even as Naruto seemed to pick up on his mistake now and face-palmed. We've had the luxury of meeting, but I was unaware she was in his home when I sent you, he said, before addressing everyone else listening in. To make a long story short, an Uzumaki from the hidden grass found Naruto during the second exam and they've been looking into their clan's history. For more details, you'll have to ask Naruto. Sasuke gave Naruto a hard look. You have a clan. Had, Naruto corrected. I just learned a few days ago. No one pressed him further on it. Had, implied past tense, meaning they didn't exist anymore. The fact that he was an orphan only compounded the point. Sakura was good at picking up the little clues. She noticed Sasuke's expression soured a fraction from the context. That was something he could no doubt relate to. And the fact that Naruto needed to research it at all meant there was little left, if anything. That explains the books, Sakura thought. Naruto found history class to be boring in the academy, but learning that he had a clan and lost them must have been enough to get him to pull through it. She ran her fingers through her hair, upset that she had gotten so used to hitting him prior to the forest that it was second nature. It was like that Karin girl had said, Naruto hadn't deserved it when he was dealing with all of this. She opened her mouth to apologize for his loss when Sasuke shook his head. It doesn't help when you aren't in the same boat, he mouthed to her. It would have been empty condolences from someone who hadn't lost a loved one or family. Sasuke then turned to Kakashi, who had been watching them. So, what's this meeting about? The finals? Sort of. He nodded to Asuma and Kurenai. As you know, while the Chunin exams are in effect, some teams are broken up in preparation. It wouldn't do for them to go out for a C-rank mission and end up being killed, after all. Sabotage is surprisingly frequent given the amounts often being wagered on the fights. Makes sense, Sasuke stated. When do we start training? I'll personally handle your training starting today, Sasuke, he said. We've got a lot of work to do so that Gaara fellow doesn't catch you. Lucky for you, I can get your speed up to snuff in the time we have. What about us? Sakura asked, crossing her arms. Naruto has to go against that Hyuga that hurt Hinata, and he barely scraped by because Kiba didn't watch where he stuck his nose. Hey, Kiba shouted. Not that he could deny it. Naruto pouted as well. You think I'm happy winning like that? I don't want to be known one day as the Hokage who became a Chunin because of a fart. If my chakra wasn't messed up back then, I would have beaten him fair and square. Please, me and Akamaru were wiping the floor with you the entire time. Kiba claimed, Akamaru backing him with a bark. That's not how I remember it, Naruto rebutted. I mean, I seem to remember you taking out Akamaru on your own after I changed into. Naruto has a personal trainer, Kakashi cut in, before they kept going and came to blows again. As for you, Sakura, this is a chance for you and the others who didn't get in to better yourselves. The teams are temporarily split apart due to the members who have personalized training. Why not use this opportunity to ask Kurenai for advice on genjutsu or reconnect with an old friend? The rest of the meeting was more or less the same, everyone talking about what to do in the interim between the matches and now. Hours later, once the meeting was done and they were free to leave, Sakura approached Naruto before he could wander off. Sasuke was already gone, eager to begin his training. I'm sorry for hitting you earlier, she told him. Your clanswoman, I suppose, was right. You didn't deserve that, or most of the other times I've hit you for being annoying. I said it was fine. He tilted his head. Why are you pressing it? I've been doing a lot of thinking since the Forest of Death and the preliminaries, she admitted. Once the danger passed and things settled down to the point I could go to sleep in my own bed, I began to reflect on everything. Sasuke, you, and Lee, I treated you all wrong in different ways, but you were all willing to fight and die for me. If I don't make an effort to change, then it means I'd be disrespecting that. Naruto seemed to grasp what she was saying. She wanted to make a change to better herself, so that she never had to watch from the sidelines as her comrades fought and died for her. He nodded his head and smiled. Okay then. Apology accepted. Sakura motioned towards the village proper. I'm going to visit Lee in the hospital. Would you like to come with me to see Hinata too? He grinned. Yeah, I should tell her about how I'm going to wipe the floor with her cousin. Hold up. Kiba called, Shino by his side. We're coming too. The more the merrier. The four of them then departed to see their hospitalized friends, hoping to cheer them up before they threw themselves into their training for the finals. Welcome home, Karin told Naruto as he walked through his door later that evening. How was your day? I went to visit a friend in the hospital after the meeting. He wrinkled his nose as he caught the scent in the air and his stomach gurgled. Did you stay the entire day to cook? You don't mind, do you? She asked. I thought that, since I made you late, I would make you a meal while finishing some research. I can pay you back for the ingredients tomorrow. Don't worry about it, he said, slipping out of his sandals by the door. It's just that I don't think a girl's ever cooked something for me besides a yamene. It smells great. Wash your hands and face while I set a place at the table for you. As he went into the bathroom to do so, the sound of the water pouring out of the faucet reaching her ears, Karin gave it a final taste test. It was passable, but not the best it could be. Naruto didn't have all the spices that she would have liked, but he did have enough of the base ingredients for her to work with. Naruto emerged from the bathroom without his orange suit, instead wearing a pair of loose pants and his black shirt as he sat at the table. His eyes shimmered as she sat the plate down in front of him, showing some kind of stew on rice that had a mouth-watering scent. He used a spoon to scoop up some and took a bite into the hot meal. His back tensed as the flavors played on his taste buds. This is pretty good. You're a great cook, Karin-chan. She chuckled slightly at the compliment, smiling as she brushed her hair. It's nothing. Just something I learned to make growing up. Her expression sobered a bit as she readied her own plate. Will your friend in the hospital be okay? She seemed better when we visited her, but the doctor and her sensei said that she won't be leaving for a while because of the injury she got in the preliminaries. Naruto's grip on his spoon tightened. I'm going to pound her cousin for that. Karin didn't know enough about the situation to comment, so she just sat down across from him to eat at the small table with her own plate. Even with the quiet, she found it nice to be able to just enjoy his company. Naruto was genuinely warm to her, not like her teammates in grass or the cold intrigue that Orochimaru had with her. When they were done, Naruto childishly patted his stomach with a grin on his face. That hit the spot. You'd make a great housewife with cooking like that. I don't see myself retiring so easily to remain at home, but your compliment is accepted. Karin picked up one of the books that had been spread open to reveal an old map of Hidden Leaf's territory. She pointed to a spot on it that had, Shrine, written on it. I found this shrine related to the Uzumaki a few hours ago. He squinted at the icon. It's pretty far from the village, right on the outskirts. Do you want to go check it out? I would, but it wouldn't do for me to leave out on my own, she told him. I was wondering if you could ask your tutor to be our guide. No problem, he said. Thanks. She rinsed the plates off and organized the scattered books around his home. It wouldn't do to leave a mess for him to clean up when she had been his guest. Afterwards, she slipped her combat sandals over her sock-laden feet and stood at the door. I'll see you tomorrow then. You're leaving. I spent the entire night here by mistake, so if I don't get back it could raise questions. She opened the door and the cool evening breeze rustled her hair. Remember to put the leftovers away when you're done for the night. The rest can be used for lunch. I'll walk you back, Naruto offered, rising out of his chair and slipping on his own combat sandals. She welcomed the company on her journey back. Oh. They took off the next day. Naruto went to Gama the first thing in the morning and told him about Karin's suggestion. He agreed to it and told him to get Karin to come with them, stating that they may as well go together. Now all three of them, no Anbu in the range of her mind's eye, were heading there by weaving through the dense trees that made up the forest surrounding the Hidden Leaf village. Naruto turned his head around towards Karin, who was trailing after them. Do you want us to slow down? I'm okay, Naruto. She touched one foot on the tree limb gingerly and then pushed off, leaping further than before with precise control to end up next to him. Her smile carried a sense of assurance. Remember, I'm a kunoichi, so I'm used to traveling quickly like this. I just don't in the village because I don't want to cause any problems while I'm visiting. Don't get your hopes up on finding anything spectacular, Gamma warned from a tree ahead. He wore a standard set of clothes and a pair of dark glasses. If it still remains, the building will likely be in ruins. I honestly expected it to be somewhat like that. She adjusted her glasses. After all, most of the maps made after the one I found didn't have it marked. It had to have been neglected for decades at least. However, there may be something left inside. Despite her words, even she came up short when they finally arrived at the site. The building was a wooden temple, decrepit as even the broad pillars holding the entrance up gave way, leaving the top that bore the clan's symbol to lean in exhaustion after so many years. Truly a somber sight if there ever was one. Karin pressed her lips thin and stepped forward almost absent-mindedly, slowly climbing the stairs with Naruto and his tutor following as she walked under the slouching doors, perpetually left open. It was dark inside, patches of sunlight filtering in through the breaks and gaps in the ceiling. Roaches, along with other insects and small vermin, skittered about at the presence of the three intruders. The only thing that hadn't been battered by age, insects, and harsh weather was the podium at the center that housed a number of masks divided into 3 rows. Why are these masks here? Naruto asked. Maybe it was a storage temple for them. Gamma held his chin in thought before setting his other hand out, stopping Naruto from getting ahead of him. Don't step closer until I've checked to make sure it's clear. He's right, she added. The mask and podium are untouched, despite how the rest of the temple is. That's not natural. Something has to be preserving them. Given the clan's skill at sealing arts, it's a safe bet that's the cause. The Junin began making hand seals. I'm going to use a technique to scan for any seals. It's not perfect, but most will show up. Karin looked down at her feet as he finished the hand seals and a wave passed over them. Her cursed seal of subjugation didn't react, but Naruto held his stomach and muttered something about it feeling tingly. She briefly wondered if that technique had exposed his Jinchuriki seal beneath his clothes, but she didn't pay it much mind when she noticed that 9 of the masks were shuddering. Are they supposed to do that? Naruto asked as the masks fell from the podium. I'm going with, no, Naruto, Karin answered as she took a step back towards the exit. Rather than hit the ground, the masks loitered in the air. Some kind of fluid or material seethed from the inside of the masks. They began to take form: a tortoise, a dragon, a snake, a bird, a tiger, a priestess, a reaper, and 2 sages, becoming 9 creatures adorned with the masks as their faces. Trespassers of hallowed Uzumaki grounds, whispered a chorus of voices, devoid of any emotion. You have defiled this place with your presence. We need to leave, Gamma said. Before the words died as the tortoise proved to be a lot faster than expected when it threw itself at them, leaving Naruto's tutor to grab them both and leap out of the entrance before it exploded in a shower of wood dust and splinters as the large creature broke through the barricade. The others broke through the dust and came after the shinobi, with the agile bird decorated with plumage cutting off their escape route with the priestess on its back. She used her ribbons as whips and lashed out at them, forcing Gamma to turn so that they didn't get hit. The impact against his unprotected back sent them all to the ground. Naruto was up on his feet with a kunai in hand not a second afterwards while the masked creatures tried to surround them. Karin-chan, Gamma-sensei, are you both okay? I'm fine, she told him as she picked her glasses up off the ground and replaced them in time to see the snake and dragon were coming for them as the sages looked on. Gamma threw himself forward and smashed them both aside with his fist and leg, proving to be stronger than he looked. Then Karin abruptly stiffened as her mind's eye picked up the flow of chakra beneath them and she grabbed Naruto, pulling him to the side as ceiling script etched in purple appeared where they once stood and erupted in a column of purple light. That was close, Naruto huffed before noticing the Reaper was coming for them, scythe brandished. Naruto pushed her back as he followed, throwing them both largely out of the way of the attack before making a cross seal. Small plumes of smoke erupted, and where there was once one Naruto, there were now many. With over a dozen Narutos standing between it and the two Uzumaki, the Reaper swept its scythe out and sent forth a large colorless wave. The fang-like wave raked through all of them, dissipating them into nothingness as Naruto and Karin low to avoid. Naruto still found himself on the verge of passing out. No way, I can't. Naruto, what's wrong? She asked, catching him before he could collapse onto the ground. Her mind's eye noticed that his reserves were nearly bottomed out. He'd lost most of his chakra in an instant. All of the chakra I sent into the clones are gone, Naruto said, sounding exhausted. But I don't know how. She could take a guess. The shadow clone technique used a set amount to create each clone's body and mass before dividing the remainder of the original's chakra into them, making them capable of using techniques without vanishing until what went into molding it was taken. All of that chakra was supposed to return to him when they were dissipated, but the technique the Reaper used stripped them of it. Not gone, Karin said immediately as the Reaper raised the scythe higher and spun it around, releasing 8 more slashes towards the other masked creatures. That wave tore it out and sent it back to the one with the scythe. And now it's redistributing the chakra to the rest of them. The moment the wind blades came into contact with them, the masked creatures grew stronger. If their movements before had been sluggish comparatively, as if to conserve strength, then they were now free to move far faster. The beasts that Gamma had been fending off on his own became more feral, hitting harder until the tortoise and bird managed to hit him into the serpent. It used its elongated body to coil around him until only an upraised arm was free. Look out, Karin called to Naruto as the Reaper came in again with its scythe. Exhausted, Naruto was unable to avoid the blade completely as it cleaved through the front of his jumpsuit and into the flesh laid bare beneath it, sapping the rest of his chakra and drawing blood. He managed to kick it in the face with the last of his strength, driving it off, before the priestess. Ribbons found their way around Naruto and squeezed as they raised him in the air, threatening to crush his bones as he struggled fruitlessly and dropped his kunai. Run! Naruto yelled. It's coming for you again. She looked to see the Reaper was closing in once more and her heart stilled in her chest as she felt another barrier being erected around her in a wider scale, one she couldn't get away from. She was trapped with the Reaper in the circle, death closing in. A thought occurred then, recalling the words from before, and she let herself be heard by all who would hear her. In the name of the Uzumaki, I command you to stop. Karin yelled, holding the dropped kunai in front of her as she took a defensive pose. To her surprise, all of them did. The masked creatures, including the Reaper with its blade now inches from her face, came to an absolute standstill. Thy claim to be of Uzumaki birth? Asked the Reaper. I am a survivor of the Uzumaki clan. She continued, shaking in place. My blood is that of our clans, which has been wiped out since you last walked the land. As is the boy the priestess squeezes the life out of at this very moment. How dare you raise your arms against me and my allies when I possess the blood of your creators and have every right to all within the shrine? Why yeah, what she said. Naruto added. You should be listening to us. Not attacking us. Submit proof of blood, the Reaper ordered, holding the blade forward. Karin immediately slid her finger on the tip and felt a tinge of her chakra being absorbed by it. The Reaper withdrew his blade. Your blood is that of the oldest blood. Your claim is valid. Then harm us no further and return to your slumber. Karin ordered. The creatures acquiesced to the order and vanished, their forms retreating into the masks that clattered onto the ground. The beautiful, almost gossamer thin ribbons that had bound Naruto disappeared and he fell onto the ground with a yelp, clutching his wound afterwards. Karin was by his side, lifting her sleeve to expose her forearm. Naruto, you need to bite me. He looked both puzzled and pained, but there was no time to delay. She placed her forearm in his mouth and then forced his jaw up to clamp down hard enough to trigger her ability. It sent an electric trill throughout her body, pleasure of an almost forbidden nature eliciting a sensual cry from her lips despite her best efforts to stem it. Her body tremored in place as the high was followed by shuddering breaths until she noticed both of them staring at her. Karin's face turned crimson. Hey, are you okay now, Naruto? Naruto blinked when the question registered. He poked into the opening in his jumpsuit to find knitted flesh. Her mind's eye told her that the excess of the chakra used to heal his wound fed into his depleted reserves, relieving the chakra exhaustion. Whoa, you can heal people. Karin was still red in the face as she sat on her knees and nodded, refusing to meet his eyes. She lifted her sleeve slowly to show a few other bite marks on her skin. Mother said that our clansmen and clanswomen are often long-lived, and sometimes that manifests in different ways. Mine is that, when people bite me, it transfers my yang chakra into their bodies and heals them. Interesting, Gamma said, even as he scribbled something down on a notebook. I can understand why you'd keep it a secret, for more reasons than one. Good thing we were alone here. Naruto seemed to recall the expression and sound she made at that moment, considering he blushed himself. Then he looked down at where his teeth were impressed upon her skin. That sobered him. Will that go away? She lowered her sleeve. The marks don't heal. It's not something I like showing others, or letting them know I can do it at all, but you got hurt because of me. I wouldn't have been able to stand doing nothing and watching you die for it. How did you know they would listen to you? Asked the Junin as he picked up a mask and turned it around in his hands. He then looked back to where the others laid in the temple that looked even more battered with the entrance now a gaping hole. I didn't, Karin claimed. I gambled on the fact that they could talk meant they had intelligence, and that they were guarding an Uzumaki shrine meant they'd listen to me. It was all pure luck. Right, well, I'll need to report this. He created his own shadow clone and handed over the mask and a few tags before he turned back to the kids. My clone will set up a couple of barrier tags and stay behind to watch it while we go back. I'll tell the Hokage about this place and he'll send some people to guard it and figure out what to do next. I'm going to have to leave the village, aren't I? Karin asked, looking down. I wanted to follow a lead, but I nearly got you all killed. Relax. The Junin set a comforting hand on her shoulder. You did good finding this place, and you acted quickly enough to avoid any serious injuries. You found a small piece of your clan's legacy that had been lost until now, even if it turned out to be more than expected, and you showed something you wanted to keep hidden in order to save Naruto. You didn't do anything wrong. If anything, the Hokage might have people comb over the old documents and records to see if other places like this are still around after the finals are done. Naruto nodded his head in agreement. And if the old man does try to kick you out, I'll march into his office and tell him otherwise. Promise. Karin doubted he could do that, but the fact that he would try brought a smile to her face. She pushed her hair behind her ears and told them, thank you. Both of you. Oh. Later that day, in the Hokage's office, Gamma gave his report to Sarutobi. The Hokage was pensive as he listened until the end, taking these new developments into mind. Once the report was finished, he reached for his pipe and took a puff before softly exhaling a stream of smoke. Were they really that difficult to handle? He asked. These constructs bound to the masks. You told me not to expose myself in 9-1 while protecting the kids would have given me away, Jiraiya said. I was getting ready to pull a substitution with the Naruto using a clone and would have gotten serious when she called them off, but they weren't stupid. They were fighting smart and on limited chakra at best, at least before Naruto got drained. Quote. Sarutobi exhaled a ring of smoke. Well, what's done is done. The masks and scrolls found in the hollowed-out podium have been confiscated and will merit some investigation before we decide what to do with them. As for Miss Uzumaki, I find it fascinating that she would possess such an ability. Quote. The disguised Sanin nodded in agreement. Yang chakra is that which interacts best with physical energy in the body. Kushina manifested them as chains that could suppress chakra, but in her case it seems the surplus is offloaded into whoever bites her to restore them. Princess would have loved that, has there been no word from her? No, I'm afraid not. Sarutobi sighed. I have Anbu tracking her down as we speak, but I doubt they'll find her before the finals. We'll simply have to be ready without her aid, but afterwards, I suspect we'll have to force her back. He didn't argue against the point. He hoped it didn't come to that, but she was still a kunoichi of the village. If the Hokage made the summons official, Sanin or not, she would be forced back, even if Jiraiya had to bring her himself. It may be time for you to Naruto in accessing the fox's chakra. Sarutobi settled back in his chair. It would be useful should he find himself in such a pinch again. I'll leave the details to you, but warn him not to mention it to Miss Uzumaki. As you wish, sensei. Rock Lee slept silently as Sakura replaced the flowers in the vase on the cabinet next to him. The sedative the nurses gave him for the pain in his arm and leg had done its work. He had tried to put on a brave face through it, but she could tell it was bothering him and was glad he looked peaceful now. See you again, Lee, Sakura whispered before rising from her seat beneath the window that filled the room with warm sunlight. She left the room, closing the door behind her. It clicked shut softly and left her on the other side, out in the corridor of the hospital and under the artificial lights. She sighed as she meandered towards the exit. Sakura hated seeing Lee like that, unable to do more for him after he risked his life to save her in the forest. Naruto and Sasuke had at least gotten through it without any permanent injuries, but considering how long Lee had been here. Her head perked up when she noticed the door to Hinata's room was being opened. Out stepped Shino, who gave her a short nod. Hinata wishes to see you. She opened her mouth to ask how she knew that she was there, but then remembered Hinata's bloodline. It would be able to peer past most of the walls easily. Okay. Sakura entered the room when Shino stepped aside and found that Kiba was also there, with Akamaru perched on his head. The small puppy barked happily at her. As for Hinata, she was sitting up in her bed with a sheet covering her lower body. There was an apologetic smile on her face. I'm sorry for calling for you when you were about to leave, Haruno-san. You can call me by my first name, Hinata. Sakura came to a stop on front of her bed. How are you feeling? Did Naruto come by? I feel much better now, and Naruto-kun brought this delicious stew to share with me, she said, blushing. Sakura got the feeling that there was more to it. Knowing him, he probably ended up doing something a couple would without realizing it, like spoon-feeding her. Hinata extended her hand with a card in it. He left this behind when he came for his lunch break. If you don't mind, could you return it to him? Hinata nodded. He showed it to me while telling me about his clan. She looks a lot like that Karin girl he's been hanging around with. She noticed Hinata shift a bit at that. Did he tell you about her? He did. It's good that he has someone who will spend time with him while everyone is busy, Hinata claimed, looking down. Her fingers clenched her bed sheet. Naruto-kun sounds like he's having fun with her. And he's happy to have someone he can call family. I'm glad for him. Sakura couldn't help but wonder if she was truly happy about it. She obviously had a crush on the brave doofus, and back when she and Ino were fighting over Sasuke this sort of thing would have drove her up the wall. Then again, Hinata was always quiet and reserved when they were anything but that. I'll get it back to him, Sakura said. You focus on getting better before his match. He'll want you there to cheer him on as well. Hinata's expression became a bit more crestfallen at that. I really don't want them to fight, or hurt each other. Neji Ni-san he's not a bad person. Like hell he isn't. Kiba abruptly yelled, causing her to flinch. Don't defend what he did, Hinata. Hinata curled up, trembling as she brought her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. He's just, when I was younger, things happened and his father died because of me. He has every reason to be angry at me. Kiba's answer to that was about the same as before. Bullshit. That doesn't make it right. If Naruto doesn't kick his, I'll jump him in the street outside after the matches are over if I have to. Indeed, Shino agreed in a placid tone of voice, slightly adjusting his shades. Regardless of his past, you did not warrant such hostility. He must be made to answer. Should Naruto not prevail, then I will see to it myself, to ensure that he does not get away with it. They were both protective of her in their own way, just like Naruto and Sasuke had been for Sakura at times. Because of that, Sakura could understand what she was feeling now by watching her gaze fall down to her lap. That feeling of self-loathing from needing them to defend you because you weren't able to help yourself was something that she knew all too well. Don't worry, Sakura told her gently, setting a hand on her shoulder. Things will work out. They were just words, but they seemed to put her at ease. Sakura left out hoping that she wouldn't be made a liar as she went back to Naruto's place. It was the most likely place to find him since she didn't know where he was training at, and she could just slip the card under his door if he wasn't there. Oh. Karin wasn't exactly thrilled to see Naruto's pink-haired teammate standing at the bottom of the stairs leading to his apartment when she arrived. In her hands were two very large and heavy bags with fresh ingredients for her to cook with. Maybe she had gotten too much considering she was half serious about calling the Anbu officer still watching her down to help. Is there something you want? She asked, adjusting her grasp on the bags. I came to return something Naruto had left behind at the hospital. Sakura stepped forward and reached out for a bag. Let me help you. Far be it for Karin to argue. She handed the heaviest one over and started climbing the stairs. Sakura followed after her. This is a lot of food, she noted. Naruto doesn't have a lot of variety in his refrigerator, Karin said. And she wasn't exactly using most of the money she had left since the in-room was paid up through the exams. When they reached the door, she pulled out Naruto's key. He had loaned it to her, leaving her somewhat worried about how easily he trusted her after only a week. They filed into his home and Sakura seemed taken aback by how the number of books had multiplied since their successful foray in finding the masks. Naruto pretty much picked up anything that he felt would lead to another success, so most of her day was spent going through them. Karin stepped over them carefully and then made it into the kitchen to set her bag down. When Sakura did so as well, Karin crossed her arms and asked, "What did he leave behind?" Sakura reached for her pouch and pulled out a card. It was the one with Naruto's mother on it. He left that visiting a friend in the hospital. Karin placed it in her pocket and set her hands on her hips. If that's all, you can leave now. Sakura scowled at the dismissal. Are you really that angry with me? You're not even trying to mask it. Yes, Karin stated bluntly. The way Naruto just brushed that hit off tells me that you do that sort of thing often enough. He's been conditioned into accepting it. That tells me all I need to know about you. I'm trying to be a better friend and teammate to him, Sakura claimed. And you don't have the right to judge me when you just came into his life. You're making assumptions based on one thing when I've been his teammate for months now. You still need to leave, Karin said. Sakura refused. I'm staying until Naruto gets back. I have to talk to him about something else from his hospital visit. Besides, you might be part of his clan, but he just met you and you're from a foreign village. Letting you stay in his home alone could cause problems. Karin glared at Sakura through her glasses for a moment. Then she huffed. It wasn't like she could force her out while she was a guest of the village. And there was nothing to be gained by forcing Naruto to decide between the two of them when he returned. He was already busy enough training as is. It'd be petty, and now wasn't the time for that. If you're going to stay, then make yourself useful. Help make dinner by cutting vegetables. Oh. Naruto was a bit tired, his clothes still weighed down by the water he had been made to soak in as he fell into the lake he had trained on. So he welcomed the scent of freshly cooked food coming from his home, secretly happy that Karin had obviously decided to cook again. He was, however, understandably confused when he found Sakura there as well. Naruto, you're back, she asked, wiping her eyes with her forearms. There was a knife in her hand as she peeled what looked to be an onion. Why do you look drenched? I was supposed to practice water walking for the next stage of my training. Naruto scratched the back of his head. What are you doing here, Sakura-chan? Sakura brushed her hands clean with a towel and then walked over to speak to him. You left your mother's card with Hinata. She told me to bring it back and I just so happened to run into your clanswoman on the way in. Now I'm helping with making dinner since I didn't have anything better to do while you were training. He fished through his pockets in search of the card, surprised at his own carelessness. I really did leave it. Karin pulled out the card from her pocket. You should be more careful with the things you care about, Naruto. Don't let them out of your sight. Yeah, I got it. He took the card back and turned to Sakura with a bright smile on his face. Thanks for bringing it back to me. It wasn't a problem, Sakura said. Didn't you have something else you wanted to talk to him about? Karin asked in a barbed tone, keeping her eyes on the boiling pot. That is why you stayed, isn't it? Sakura looked over her shoulder at Karin and scowled before turning back to Naruto. It's about your match with Neji. Hinata doesn't want you to hurt him too badly, or for you to get hurt. I can't let what he did slide, Naruto said. Even if I could, I still want to become a Chunin in order to become Hokage. That means I have to beat him, and I don't think he's going to go down without a fight. Despite his anger when he made the vow on her blood, he was fully aware of how dangerous Neji was. He wasn't underestimating him, but he was intent on beating him. Short of one of them giving up, someone was going to get hurt. And Naruto never gave up. Naruto, beating him in Chunin exams doesn't guarantee that you'll become one, Sakura pointed out. Besides, he's a Hyuga. If you get close to him, he can shut you down. You saw what he did to Hinata and they practice the same style. I just need to learn some new techniques and I'll cream him, Naruto stated. Once I get past this exercise, I'll ask Gamma-sensei for some cool ones I can use. You're thinking the wrong way, Karin said as she turned off the stove, getting their attention. Chunin don't just have higher levels of chakra or more techniques at their disposal. They have to use sound tactics to ensure their mission is complete with as few sacrifices as possible, and that's what the examiners will be looking for. Don't focus on how to beat him into submission through sheer force, but instead how to beat him in a way that allows you to walk away without being harmed. If you can do that with the basics at your disposal alone, you're almost assured a promotion even if you lose your other matches. She has a good point, Sakura agreed, somewhat hesitantly. Your basics are called that for a reason, and you probably waste a lot of chakra in performing them because you have so much that you don't bother regulating it. Remember, you still have to get through the other matches too, and you can't do that if you waste all of your chakra fighting him. You might have a point there, he admitted. You said you were doing the water walking exercise, right? Karin waited until he nodded before continuing. That exercise is good for control, so it's probably why he gave it to you to do. If you can show me a place with a large enough body of water, I'll show you how it's done after we've finished eating. Once that's mastered, we can take time to work on a strategy. This sounds awesome, but weren't you still searching for stuff on our clan in those books? He asked. Can you handle all of that? I can probably help with that, Sakura offered. I'm good at research, and it sounds interesting enough. That'd be great, Naruto said. Thanks. For now, change your clothes and wash up for dinner. Karin turned to Sakura. And you're welcome to stay too. This time I made more than enough. Sakura's eyebrows furrowed in suspicion. Why the change of heart? Mostly pragmatic reasons, she confessed. You have the same level of access to the library that Naruto does, but from what he's told me during some of our talks, you're better suited to finding books that have more substance than simple history books. Plus, even I have to admit that trying to organize a plan for Naruto's match on top of everything else would be too much for me to do on my own. At least you're honest, Sakura said. I think I will join you. Hinata did mention what you made before was decent. Naruto watched the exchange between the girls with some confusion, feeling as though there was some underlying meaning in their words he didn't have the context for. He decided that, since it seemed stable enough, to just do as Karin said and went to the bathroom. There he changed his clothes and washed up before enjoying dinner with the pair. Night had fallen by the time the food had settled and Sakura left for home. Naruto brought Karin to one of the training grounds with a small lake that wasn't in use. I was practicing here before. Is this okay? It'll do fine. She crouched down and slipped out of her sandals and socks before dipping a toe in the water. It made her shiver a bit. Now watch me, Naruto. Karin stood on the water barefooted with no problem not like him. Whereas his attempt had left the water unstable with bubbles frothing beneath him, hers was stable enough that there weren't even any obvious ripples. She extended her hand for him to take just over the edge of the water. "Grab my hand and place one foot into the water," she told him. When he did, Karin slipped her foot beneath where his was so that it sank just beneath the surface by a few centimeters with his weight. There was no discomfort on her part as she leveled it with more chakra. "Okay. Go ahead and start releasing your chakra like you would the tree climbing exercise, but keep letting it out." Naruto did, releasing the chakra through the tenketsu under his foot. It began to offset the water beneath him and pushed off against her foot until it breached the surface. "A little lower, Naruto," she told him. "You shouldn't disturb the water so much when doing this. That's a sign you're using too much chakra." "Okay." He tapered the flow a bit more and felt the layer between him and the water thinning. "There." She slipped her foot back to the surface in front of his. "Remember that feeling and do the same for your other foot." Naruto stepped forward as she took a step back and went slightly off balance until he adjusted. "I got it. Don't get too excited," Karin warned. "Standing and walking are a lot more difficult than you think." As if to prove the point, she kicked gently off the water with her front foot and slid back several feet before coming to a stop, as though she skated across the surface. "Try to reach me." He stepped forward and found it becoming harder to adjust with each step as the surface tension changed with his weight shifting of the water. When he was partway there, he almost stumbled back into the water and risked getting his clothes wet again. Soft fingers caught him before he could fall. "Not so easy, is it?" She skated around him, almost as though she was gliding across the surface. "The water's surface is fluid, constantly moving around. It's a windless night and the surface is still, but you're still struggling. Now imagine trying to cross a river or the ocean." Naruto imagined that the river alone would sweep him up easily. The ocean would be merciless, even if he had the chakra to cross it. Still, it probably would have been useful in wave. "How are you skating on it?" "Lots of practice," she told him. "Like you, I don't know a lot of techniques or have much combat experience, but I do have my basics down to near perfection." She pointed to the end of the lake. "Do you think you'll be able to make it to the other side of the lake while we're here?" He shook his head. This is going to take some getting used to." "That's fine." Karin skated forward and slipped her fingers between his so they were interwoven. Then she pulled him close. He noticed that she had a nice scent and her body was warm. "I'll help you get it. Just stay close to me until you're almost out of chakra and follow my lead." Naruto did, and she led him along every step, almost as if they were dancing under the moon that was reflected beneath their feet. Karin watched in the comfort of the shade as Naruto balanced himself on the surface of a small lake. In truth, she wasn't even sure why she had been asked to come here for their training session by his tutor. But she could see he had greatly improved since the night where they had danced hand in hand on top of the water, beneath the moonlight. She found herself taking pride in how quickly he grasped it when even she had struggled to reach the level of proficiency she had. Orochimaru wasn't exactly the kindest man to serve under. For the people he had high expectations for, he went out of his way to ensure they were met. His teaching method for working on control had been a perversion of water walking, with things waiting beneath the surface for her to stumble in or notice if she made too many ripples. The results spoke for themselves by the time she had been sent to infiltrate the ranks of the hidden grass. She was silent as she crossed the water, leaving as little of the surface disturbed as possible. The fact that she found a way to teach someone else without the hard push that she had been given was a nice experience, especially considering that it was helping Naruto in furthering his goal of beating his opponent in the finals. Things had been great for her, better than she expected when she arranged to meet him at first. Being around Naruto had been almost like a dream compared to how distant things were in grass, and how unwelcoming the others in the base where she had been stationed and trained were. In a way, that made what would happen at the end of all of this even worse. She shuddered a bit at the thought of how his bright smile and the warm feeling of his chakra would be twisted by whatever experimentation Orochimaru would put him through. But there was nothing she could do. The plan was no doubt already in motion, and whatever part she was meant to play didn't allow for failure if she wanted to avoid a fate worse than death. By the end, there wouldn't be any place for her besides wherever Orochimaru put her. Okay, that's pretty good, Naruto's tutor told him as he approached the edge of the water. I didn't expect you to pick it up so fast. I guess that means we can move on to the next part of your training. But, before that, Karin-chan. Karin briefly floundered at being called before rising to her feet. Yes. Come here for a second, will you? He waited until she did as he asked before pulling out something wrapped in a cloth and holding it out. You both remember our little trip to the mask storage temple, yes? Karin nodded alongside Naruto. It was hard to forget when you were nearly cut down by a sentient mask, only to escape by the skin of your teeth due to a guess that she took. To their mutual surprise, one of the masks was revealed when he pulled back the cloth. The Hokage sent a group to check the temple and they found some documentation about the masks. It mentioned that they were made in honor of celestial beings of the Uzumaki clan that were divided into roles between heaven and earth. The lowest were divine beasts that walked the earth, with the divine priests and priestess being the messengers of the divine gods who resided in the heavens above. The 9 masks that were active at the temple were the 5 beasts and 4 priests and priestess, while the masks representing the divine gods were inert. I thought it was simply a piece of lore that had been enshrined with the masks, but maybe whoever designed them had intended for that to be incorporated. Well, legends often hide ancient truths within them, Karin mused. Do you understand how they work? Not exactly, he admitted. Based on our encounter, it seems they utilize chakra to shape their vessels and have a limited form of sentience. However, we're having difficulty summoning them from the masks. So I thought you two might hold the solution. Quote. Because they only respond to someone of the Uzumaki lineage, Karin guessed. That about it? We believe so. That's why I've asked you here today. If Naruto can control them on his own and safely before the start of the finals, they'll be considered ninja tools and he'll be allowed to use them. Like a puppet would be considered a puppeteer's tool rather than a full-fledged summoning. So if I get this to work, I can call up all of them for the match. Naruto seemed excited at the prospect of being able to summon up 9 minions. His tutor had to quickly add, not all of them, realistically speaking. Because of your age and how difficult they'll likely be to manage, we're limiting your access to them until we have a good understanding of their behavioral responses and to see if the seal work can be replicated without the bloodline restrictions. Once all that is cleared up though, the Hokage will likely hand them over to you. Anyway, the reason we chose this one for you to experiment with is because, should it go rampant, I'll have the least amount of trouble suppressing it. Naruto picked up the mask and held it above his head as he stared at the visage of the tiger it had been shaped into. Okay, how do I do this? Try streaming your chakra into the mask, slowly at first. It has receptors to allow it to take it in and store it. Once it reaches a critical point, you should be able to call it out by touching the emblem on the back of the mask. The symbol there reads, lineage, from what we could gather, so I suspect you'll need blood as proof. Let's do this. Naruto closed his eyes and began to pour his chakra into it. Then he frowned, opening his eyes and looking the mask over in confusion. It's not taking my chakra. Try again, Gamma said. Slowly. Karin decided to use her mind's eye to observe as he tried again. Naruto's chakra was being actively rejected for some reason. That was strange. Karin focused her sensory ability wholly onto him for a deeper scan and found the source, immediately breaking into a cold sweat when she did. Inside of him was a veritable sea of corrupted yang chakra, tainted by inhuman malevolence that seemed ready to spill out and swallow the world. That was what was sealed inside of Naruto. How could anything so wrong be held at bay by whatever seal was placed on him? Naruto grumbled in frustration as he struggled to push his chakra into the mask futilely once more, only to stop when he noticed that Karin was trembling. Are you okay, Karin-chan? Oh, I'm fine. Karin took a deep breath to steady herself as she deactivated her power. She believed she knew the reason why he couldn't use it. A trickle of that corrupted yang chakra was mixing into his own chakra system from the look of it. Whatever safeguards were in place on the mask could detect that. I think I figured out what's wrong. Naruto and Gamma alike turned to her in expectation. She had their attention. Yang chakra, she explained. You probably need to concentrate yang chakra into it. The only ways for him to be able to use that mask that she could think of were to either completely seal off the demon fox, which she couldn't mention for her own safety, or for him to refine his own chakra into yang chakra. If he created enough pure yang chakra, then it would dilute the trickle of corrupted chakra to the point of being non-existent. You couldn't have both in a single vessel after all, so the greater amount would erode the lesser amount. What's yang chakra? Naruto asked his tutor. I heard it mentioned before, but I didn't think much about it. How's it different from regular chakra? Gamma snapped his fingers. Right. Most Junin don't usually teach nature transformation until after you've had at least a year or two under your belt. Basically, chakra is formed of spiritual and physical energy melding together. However, that chakra can be converted into elemental chakra, wind, water, fire, lightning, and earth being the basics. Bloodline's limits are usually a merging of two or more elements. Then what about what Shikamaru does with shadows and everything? Naruto asked. That's where yin and yang chakra comes in, Gamma told him. The Nara clan's technique is mostly yin-based, though I'm not privy to their secrets on how it's done or molded. But most illusions are done through using yin chakra to create something out of nothing. It's the spiritual energy that allows the imagination to take form.